But today I'm going to talk to you about Prunus. This is a Prunus Mahaleb, but also Prunus spinosa. And I know some people here have got Prunus spinosa, which are beautiful trees. So I'm going to talk about that, but I'm also going to talk about the way people are styling their deciduous trees. Because I think there are fundamental things going wrong. So you may not agree with me on this. You may think I'm talking complete shit, but that's the way I am. So for me, this is how a Prunus should be styled. We're styling it for the flowers. It shouldn't be styled like a pine tree. Now there is a Prunus Mahaleb in the exhibition that is absolutely spectacular with its deadwood, but its styling is atrocious. And every single artist looked at it and said, amazing deadwood, but the foliage styling is terrible because it's styled like a pine tree. And he styles it because he said the flowers only last for 2 weeks of the year, and the rest of the time I want it to look like a tree that I like. So he styled it like a pine tree. Now you're probably, is everybody familiar with the tree that I'm talking about? It's a long one with amazing deadwood. The tree is fantastic. I have to put it here. Okay, that's better. All right, that's better, thank you. I can hear myself, you see, but is everybody okay? Can you hear me at the back now? Is that better? Yeah, so it's got amazing deadwood, but the styling is like a pine tree. And that's not good. It should be styled. If you look at any of the Japanese apricots or their prunus, they're styled like this. They're styled a little crazy. They're all like this. A lot of them are sort of semi-cascade and they're coming up like this. And that's important. Now, you're familiar with some of the crazy stuff that I do. I'm actually doing a Prunus completely opposite. I'm actually doing a Prunus spinosa in a weeping style. So it's going to be a weeping Prunus spinosa with long, dangling branches with white flowers all the way down it. Now, that's going to take me about another couple of years, but I'll be exhibiting that. And somebody somewhere is going to say, you know, I've seen this Prunus spinosa, and that's not the way they should be styled. So I'm being a little bit controversial here. I'm saying don't style it like a pine tree, but style it as a Prunus should be. But I'm doing the complete opposite as well. So let me talk to you about this tree. Surprisingly, this is an air layer. This is an air layer off a tree that was actually 2 prongs, and it came from Hans van Meer in Holland. And you can see just here where the air layer started. I've had it for 3 years now. And one of the interesting things about Prunus is it's the few deciduous trees that display deadwood. But the problem you've got with the deadwood is it rots. And it rots and rots and it eventually falls away. That's why I'm quite impressed with our pine tree Prunus Mahaleb in there. His deadwood is spectacular. But then again, he lives in a sunny place. And the north of England is not a sunny place, as you can tell by my white skin. So I treat this with wood hardener. Yeah, so I use Ronseal wood hardener, and that's why it's a little bit shiny, because I did it 2 weeks ago. But what does happen is, once it's in the sunshine, it does turn white. This one here has not been treated. That's why it's that color. But it was treated 2 years ago, so it will go white. There was a piece broken on here. Can you see where I fixed it? This one rotted away. It's actually stuck on with epoxy. Now, if I hadn't told you that, you would never know. And I think that's the interesting thing you can do with bonsai. You can fool people. And that's perfectly okay. Now, the Japanese, what they sometimes do is if they want a piece of deadwood introducing, they'll drill a hole and they'll put the piece of deadwood in there. It's perfectly fine. It's perfectly fine. Now, I won't mention any names, but John Paul Palmas did tie on red berries onto his hawthorn that he exhibited 1 year. And I said, how come you've got your berries on there? He said, they're wired on. I was like, wow, really? Now, the point is this. It did have berries on, but at the time of year, they all fell off. So do you know what? He kept them, and when it came to the exhibition, he used the finest wire and wired all the little red berries on. Perfectly acceptable. Perfectly acceptable. So, do we think when we're creating bonsai, we should be traditional or we should be slightly controversial? What do you think? Can we have a show of hands for traditional? Nothing wrong with traditional. Show of hands for controversial. Rock and roll, you're the guys. Now it's interesting, you've probably seen some of the stuff that I do. I exhibited here a yew tree on a pile of books. Now, I also exhibited a Prunus spinosa on some barbed wire. Okay? Now it's interesting, Peter Warren said to me, everybody's talking about your display, but nobody's talking about the tree. And the tree is actually really good. So that's an interesting thing. What you cannot do is you cannot put a bad tree on an interesting display, because that's not how it works. You know, you've got to have a good tree on an interesting display. Yeah. How about this? The French guy, have you seen his crazy tree? What's his name? Laurence? Do we know his name? He's just brought out his book. He and I, we talk online a lot. We call ourselves the renegades because we just do everything against what everybody else is doing, but we get noticed, which is fine. So, don't be afraid to do things differently because you will get noticed. Okay, we got any questions? You, sir. Do I feel bad? No, let me tell you something. Oscar Wilde, the famous gay poet, said, the only thing worse than being talked about is not being talked about. If they're talking about it, I don't care, you know? Are they missing the point because the tree is really good? Well, that's their problem, it's not mine. So, yeah, I feel maybe a little bit bad. You're right. Anything else? Oh, okay. The question was he finds it hard to get short internodes. Maybe there's too much water, or maybe you're feeding it too much. That's the first thing. The other thing, of course, is the great thing about prunus is you can really cut them hard back, you know? I currently have got a pistachio. Now, I must be foolish in the north of England trying to grow a pistachio, but I did it as a challenge. Now, it grows, but it doesn't thrive, okay? So it depends on where do you live? Okay, so you have sunshine. Okay, we don't have sunshine. You can tell, huh? So, getting short internodes, there's nothing wrong with, at the right time of year, cutting hard back, and now is the time to cut hard back. You can see the way that this is styled. I quite like this long pendulum stuff, you know, with the flowers on the end. But I've got Prunus spinosa that are really cut hard back and flower. It's the same, where have they gone? It's the same with your tree, yeah? You cut it hard back, and what's it like? It's like a snowball, yeah. And your styling is really nice, the styling you've done on that Prunus spinosa. You had a question, sir?
How to style the prunus?
How to style a prunus? Okay, here's a good example. There's nothing, I quite like this whole thing where it's sweeping and coming up, not like a pine tree. That is, as I say, the one in there, amazing deadwood, styled really badly. You know, it's styled, but it's not in the style that I like. And it didn't win any prizes. You know? Any other questions? Again. From Austria.
In what type of soil would you put Crataegus?
Okay, Crataegus. Crataegus is a water-based plant. Yeah, you can't really drown a Crataegus. Not really. Well, yeah, if it sits in water, yeah, of course. Even in England. Wow, listen, it's my favorite deciduous tree, Crataegus. Well, yeah, for sure. It's in my opinion, Crataegus is the best deciduous species for bonsai in Europe, bar none. Crataegus, for sure. You can make the leaves really small, and it has old bark. It has all of the characteristics that you want in a bonsai. Has anybody here got Crataegus? You have them, yeah. Yeah. I thankfully won Best Deciduous Tree here 2 years ago with a Crataegus. And then I sold it the next day. But it was only 26 years' work.
Can you wire the Prunus? Because I
Yeah.
heard that some deciduous trees should not wire, but just guy wire.
Oh, no, this has all been wired.
This is wired.
This is all wired, yeah. That sort of crazy
It
thing.
doesn't like die back or something.
No, well, good question. I use aluminium. On deciduous trees, I only use aluminium. And I use copper on yews and pines and junipers.
Why is that?
Because it's softer. It's generally softer. What you do have to be careful, of course, is if you get wire marks on a deciduous tree like this, you'll never get rid of them. They stay there forever, particularly on something like a beech, you know. But it's, yeah, aluminium is fine for deciduous trees for sure. Did you talk about the soil? Is that what you wanted to know? Yeah, okay. You want a lot, in a deciduous tree like hawthorn or prunus, you need a lot more organic. So if you're using akadama, you want 60% akadama, and then pumice or grit to go with it. Yeah, so a lot more, yeah, and with oaks as well, a lot more akadama, you know? And a deep pot. Why? To hold more water. Okay. There was a study done about 15 years ago by a chap called Derek Aspinall, who's an amazing potter. And he did some research on which loses water faster, a narrow, flat pot or a cascade pot. By a long way. It's huge, the difference between the loss of water in a cascade and the loss of water in a flat pot. So you don't necessarily need a flat. It will help, of course, in the development. But the raft hawthorn of mine, the pot was this deep. By Derek Aspinall, ironically, you know. Any other questions? Okay. Again, you, sir, come forward a little. The name of the wood hardener is Ronseal wood hardener. Ronseal is they say it does what it says on the tin. It's a wood hardener. It's really good as well. You can buy a big bottle for maybe €7. It'll last you your whole life. For sure, even at your age, it'll last your whole life, you know. Okay, you have a question? No? We've already said everything. All right. Thank you for your attention. And don't miss my demo, 1 o'clock.